Elior had lived alone for longer than he cared to count. His ranch spread over wide rolling plains on a planet far from Earth. The grass shimmered faintly under the twin suns, and small, curious creatures sometimes wandered near the fences. Elior liked it that way. Peace, silence, space to think, space to be. The humans were rare here. Most colonies had moved on to bigger cities, higher technology hubs, or distant planets where trade routes promised comfort and excitement. Elior had chosen solitude instead. He had been a soldier once, trained for space exploration and survival in harsh worlds. He had seen humans push boundaries no other species could, and now he lived quietly, his memories his only companions. Each morning, Elior followed the same routine. He rose with the suns. The first light of dawn spilled across his cabin, waking him gently. He stretched and walked outside, feeling the cool morning wind brush against his face. His animals, 3 sturdy earth cows, 2 goats, and a few chickens, waited for him. He fed them, checked fences, and watched the creatures of the plains move about. The ranch was large but manageable. Elior's hands were rough from years of labor, his muscles toned from lifting, bending, and building. Technology was sparse, but what he had, he maintained meticulously. His solar panels, water recycler, and communication array kept him connected to the distant human colony council. Yet, most of the time, he didn't need to communicate. Silence was enough. Sometimes he went to the hills beyond the ranch. There, the world stretched endlessly. The horizon met purple mountains and alien forests swayed in the wind. Elior loved to climb the ridges, sit on rocks, and breathe the fresh, untainted air. In those moments, he felt a strange unity with the universe. He thought about Earth, long gone for him, and smiled quietly. Life, he realized, had a rhythm humans could follow if they listened. Despite his contentment, loneliness often crept into his cabin at night. He missed conversations that didn't involve work or strategy. He missed laughter that was not his own. But he had learned to live with it. A human could endure much, and Elior had endured more than most. One evening, while Elior was repairing a water line near the barn, a faint hum broke the calm. He froze, wrench in hand, listening. It wasn't the usual wind or animal noise. The hum grew steadily, low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat from a machine. Elior narrowed his eyes toward the horizon. Then he saw it, a small ship descending slowly. From the sky, its lights casting strange shadows across the plains. Elior's heart beat faster, though he tried not to show it. Ships were not uncommon, but visitors were rare. And even rarer were ships that carried unknown life forms. He dropped the wrench and went to the top of a ridge for a better view. The ship was small, almost fragile-looking, with sleek curves that made it appear more alive than metal. It hovered for a moment, then slowly came down near the edge of his property. Dust rose around it, catching the last rays of the suns, and Elior shielded his eyes. The ship's ramp extended and figures appeared, tall, slender, moving carefully. They were clearly not human. Their skin shimmered in soft pastel tones, some blue, some green, and some pale pink. They had elongated limbs and eyes wider than a human's, giving them an appearance both delicate and graceful. Elior's military instincts kicked in immediately. He crouched behind a boulder, observing quietly. 11 figures emerged. They moved in careful, deliberate steps, and their bodies carried a quiet exhaustion. They looked tired, almost broken, yet something in their presence demanded respect. They were not here to attack, they were pleading. Elior could sense it. He waited. The sun dipped lower, painting the plains in warm orange and purple. Elior finally stepped forward, hands open to show he meant no harm. "Who are you?" His voice was calm but firm, carrying over the low wind. The tallest among them stepped forward. Her voice was soft but clear. "We need shelter. Please. Our planet is gone. We have nowhere to go." Elior raised an eyebrow. "All of you?" She nodded slowly. 11. Widows. We have survived, but we cannot survive alone. We Ask for your help. Elior studied them. His mind raced. His ranch was sufficient for one human, not 11 alien beings. Water, food, energy, everything was carefully balanced. But he could see it in their eyes: honesty, desperation, and trust. They were not deceivers. They were survivors. He felt a tug he had not felt in decades. Compassion, responsibility, a spark that reminded him why humans were admired across planets: empathy, courage, and resilience. Come, not too close yet, he said finally. He walked slowly to the barn, leaving a small path clear. You can rest there while I see what I can do. The aliens hesitated, then moved cautiously toward the barn. Elior watched them carefully, noting the differences in their bodies, how they handled gravity, how they balanced their weight. It was fascinating, and he found himself smiling despite the situation. Once inside the barn, he offered them water and simple food, dried meats and tuber-like vegetables grown on the ranch. The aliens took them with gentle, careful hands, bowing slightly as they accepted. Their manners were respectful, but there was fatigue in their movements. They were survivors, yes, but they were also fragile. Elior spent that night observing them from his cabin. The 11 slept on the barn floor, forming small clusters, their bodies close to conserve warmth. They whispered among themselves in soft tones, a language he could not understand. Yet he felt the meaning: stories of loss, grief, and survival. He thought about his own life. He had survived wars, colonized harsh planets, and lived in isolation. Yet never had he felt this mixture of caution and longing. He could not abandon them, not when the universe had brought them to his doorstep. By dawn, Elior had made a decision. He walked down to the barn again, his steps steady and confident. You may stay, not just tonight, as long as you need. The alien's eyes widened. The tallest one inclined her head. We cannot thank you enough. You show mercy and courage. Elior shook his head. Humans survive because we try, that's all. And sometimes, we choose to help. Days passed, and Elior adjusted his routines. The widows learned to follow basic ranch chores. Some tended animals, others helped repair structures. They were quick learners and listened carefully. In return, they shared knowledge Elior had never seen: ways to purify water with minimal energy, herbal remedies, and strange but useful mechanical techniques. Elior began to notice little things: how they laughed when one of the goats chased a loose wheel, how they marveled at the stars in the night sky, their alien eyes reflecting the distant suns, how their presence filled the ranch with life he had long forgotten. Yet he remained cautious. His instincts as a soldier, as a human, told him that danger was never far. Neighboring factions had been known to attack refugees, and the widow's presence could attract attention. He fortified fences, checked sensors, and prepared defenses just in case. Even as he worked, Elior felt a strange sense of joy. His life, once quiet and predictable, was changing. The universe had reminded him that humans were not just survivors. They were connectors, builders, protectors. He thought about Earth, about the countless humans who had reached distant worlds and built civilizations. And now, he understood that even a single human, living alone on a quiet ranch, could make a difference. The suns rose again, spilling light over the plains. 11 alien widows moved about the barn, learning, exploring, and laughing softly. And Elior, for the first time in years, felt that solitude was not the only path. There was life, strange and beautiful, waiting for those who dared to open their hearts. Elior smiled. The quiet life he had chosen was ending, and something new, unexpected, challenging, and full of wonder, was beginning. The morning sun bathed Elior's ranch in soft gold light. The wind carried the faint scent of wild herbs and distant flowers from the alien plains. Elior moved carefully among his animals, noting the changes in his daily routine. 11 alien widows were now part of the ranch, their presence filling spaces that had been empty for decades. Despite the early hour, Elior was alert. He had learned that even small creatures could disrupt life in unexpected ways. But today, his attention was drawn to the widows themselves. They were gathered near the barn, exchanging words in their melodic, flowing language. Though Elior could not understand them, he noticed their gestures, expressions, and the way they seemed to communicate through subtle shifts of posture and color in their skin. He approached slowly. "Good morning," he said. The sound of his voice startled a few of them, and they turned in unison. Their wide eyes reflected curiosity, caution, and a flicker of trust. The tallest of them stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Good morning, Elior," she said softly. "We wish to help." Elior nodded. "I know, I've seen. But it is not easy. This ranch is small, and life here is simple. Food, water, and space are limited. You must understand." They nodded, their heads dipping in unison. It was clear they respected his boundaries. Yet Elior felt a strange warmth. Humans were often cautious, but also compassionate, and he recognized the same spark in these alien eyes. Over the next few days, Elior began teaching them the routines of the ranch. Some learned to milk the cows, their long fingers surprisingly delicate but careful. Others tended the small vegetable patches, studying the alien soil and learning which plants needed more water under the twin suns. A few were interested in machines, following Elior to the barn where he showed them how to repair the water recycler, solar panels, and communication arrays. Elior noticed differences in their approach. One widow could sense vibrations through the floor, predicting when machines would fail before he even saw a problem. Another had knowledge of alien herbs that could purify water faster than his filtration system. They were clever, adaptable, and willing to learn, but always respectful. Still, he observed a subtle sadness. They spoke often of their home planet, of their families lost in the disaster, of cities and gardens and skies that no longer existed. Elior listened in silence, understanding that their grief was deep. Humans had grief too, he knew that well. He did not rush them. He let them talk when they wished and allowed silence when words were too heavy. One afternoon, Elior noticed a small group walking near the edge of the plains. He frowned. From this distance, he could see their ships, distant but clearly alien. They were not from his part of the sector. These ships belonged to neighboring factions, some known to be hostile. Elior's heart tightened. "They are watching," he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. The widows turned their heads in unison, sensing the tension. Elior could see fear flicker in their eyes. He had expected danger. He had prepared for it. But now, it seemed closer than he had thought. He approached the tallest widow. "They are curious, maybe cautious, but you must be careful. I will handle this," he said. His tone left no room for argument. The widow inclined her head, showing trust in his judgment. That night, Elior sat outside, gazing at the stars. The widows were quiet, some resting, some observing the sky. He thought about their journey, the desperate flight from a dying planet, the loss of their families, the courage it must have taken to travel across light years to seek help. Humans often face the same challenges in exploration, yet Elior realized that humans had a unique ability to endure, adapt, and protect. And now, he was facing the same lesson, protecting lives not his own. The next morning, Elior decided to introduce a system. The widows would contribute to the ranch, each according to their strengths, and in return, he would provide shelter, food, and protection. He called them together near the barn. "You must understand," he said firmly but kindly. "This ranch can survive with your help. You will learn, but you must listen. You will respect the animals, the land, and the machines. We are building something together, not just shelter. A home." The widows nodded in unison, their movements elegant, almost ceremonial. Elior smiled faintly. "Good. Then let's begin." Tasks were assigned. A pair of widows handled animal care. They moved slowly, methodically, speaking softly to the cows and goats. Elior watched, impressed by their patience. Another group learned about the crops, studying the soil and understanding the plant's needs under the twin suns. A few worked alongside Elior in the barn, observing how to maintain machines. He was surprised at their quick learning, their ability to adapt to a world so different from their own. Despite the progress, small challenges arose. Some animals were unsettled by the new presence. One cow ran through the fence, nearly breaking it. Elior and two widows chased it down, laughing breathlessly as they guided it back. It was a moment of connection, human and alien working together in harmony. Another day, a widow accidentally dropped a tool, and it bounced across the barn floor. The sound startled a chicken, causing a small flurry of feathers. Elior shook his head, suppressing a smile. "Patience," he said. "Everything here has a rhythm. You will learn it." The widows began teaching Elior as well. One showed him how to purify water faster, using a simple chemical reaction with a native plant. Another taught him a technique to predict weather changes by observing subtle shifts in the atmosphere. He listened intently, respecting their knowledge. Humans often learned from the world around them, but Elior realized that sometimes the greatest lessons came from those willing to share wisdom across species. Then one evening, Elior noticed a subtle change in the plains. A ship, larger than before, hovered at the horizon. Lights glimmered like distant stars, but there was a sense of purpose behind them. He knew immediately. They were coming closer, investigating the newcomers. Elior called the widows together. "They may be here soon. Do not panic. Stay calm. Remember your strengths. I will handle this." The widow's eyes reflected trust and a hint of fear. Elior felt a protective surge. Humans were known for courage, and courage often came from care. He would defend them. He would show them that humans could be more than survivors. They could be guardians. The visitors landed just beyond the ridge. Elior approached them alone, standing tall and calm. The alien emissaries were imposing, their armor glinting under the suns. Their voices were sharp, mechanical in tone. "We have noticed refugees on this planet. Who allows them to settle here?" Elior's voice was steady. "I do. They are under my protection. They mean no harm. Leave them in peace." The emissaries hesitated, surprised by the calm authority in his tone. "You are human. You cannot hold them. They belong to the sector." Elior's eyes narrowed. "They belong nowhere but where they choose. You may leave peacefully, or you may force me to act. I suggest you leave peacefully." A tense silence followed. Then the emissaries slowly retreated, their ships lifting silently into the sky. Elior exhaled, feeling the tension drain from his body. He returned to the barn, where the widows waited anxiously. They left," he said softly. Relief flooded their faces. "Thanks to you," one whispered, her voice trembling. Elior shook his head. "Thanks to all of us," he said. Over the next weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. The widows grew stronger, more confident in their routines. They laughed more, explored more, and began to share stories from their pasts. Elior listened, occasionally adding his own tales of human colonies, distant planets, and adventures he had faced alone. One evening, as the sun set and painted the plains in orange, and violet, Elior stood on the ridge watching the widows move about the ranch. He felt a sense of pride and connection he had not known for decades. Humans survived through intelligence, strength, and courage, yes, but also through care, empathy, and the bonds they built with others. And now, he thought, humans could inspire even those from distant stars to survive, adapt, and thrive. The quiet life he had chosen was gone. In its place, a new life had begun, one filled with challenge, discovery, and the unexpected warmth of shared experiences. Elior smiled, feeling the beginnings of a family he had never imagined, in a universe far larger and stranger than he had ever known. The plains stretched endlessly before him. The twin suns dipped lower and the wind whispered through the tall grasses. Tomorrow would bring more work, more learning, and perhaps more visitors. But Elior was ready. Humans had endured much, and he knew he would endure whatever came next. For the first time in decades, Elior did not feel alone. The days on the ranch settled into a rhythm that Elior had not known for decades. The wind carried a soft hum of life, the low sounds of animals, the quiet chatter of the widows, and the occasional distant call of alien birds. The plains seemed calmer now, yet alive in ways Elior had forgotten. Elior rose with the suns as usual. The widows were already active. Some were tending to the animals, speaking in soft, melodic tones that seemed to soothe the cows and goats. Others worked on the vegetable patches, carefully inspecting the soil, planting seeds and learning which plants thrived under the twin suns. A few had followed Elior to the barn, where he taught them how to repair and maintain the machines that kept the ranch functioning. It was fascinating to watch them adapt. One widow, slender and with soft green skin, had an unusual gift. She could sense vibrations through the ground, detecting problems in machinery before Elior could see them. Another, with pale blue skin, had knowledge of herbs and plants that could purify water faster and more efficiently than his filtration system. Elior observed them quietly, amazed by their intelligence and skill. Yet life was not without challenges. Animals were easily startled by unfamiliar movements. One morning, a goat broke free from its pen and ran across the plains, causing a small commotion. Elior and two widows chased it, laughing breathlessly as they guided it back. The experience brought lightness to their day, a shared moment that deepened trust and connection. The widows were learning, but Elior was learning too. They had knowledge of technology and medicine far beyond what humans had developed in isolated colonies. They taught him how to read subtle changes in the atmosphere to predict weather, how to prepare herbal remedies for minor injuries, and even simple methods to store water more efficiently. Elior realized that survival was not just about strength, it was about observation, learning, and adaptability. Over time, bonds began to form. The widows shared stories of their home planets, cities with towers that touched the sky, forests that glowed softly at night, oceans filled with creatures that shimmered in color. Elior listened, imagining each place vividly, his mind filling with wonder. They spoke also of loss, the sudden destruction of their homes, the families they could not save. Though Elior could not fully understand their grief, he felt it deeply. It reminded him of the friends and comrades he had lost during his own adventures. One evening, as the suns dipped low, painting the plains in orange and purple, Elior called the widows together. "We have settled into a rhythm," he began. "But this world is not without danger. Others may see your presence here and question it. They may not understand why I allow you to stay." The widows looked at him, their wide eyes reflecting concern. "Others?" one asked softly. Elior nodded. "There are factions nearby. Some are curious, some are hostile. You must be prepared, but you must not panic. We will face it together." The widows listened attentively. Despite their exhaustion and past trauma, they trusted him. Elior understood that trust was a fragile but powerful bond, something humans had learned long ago, and something he now relied upon. The next day, signs of interest began to appear. A small group of scouts from a neighboring sector moved along the horizon, observing the ranch from a distance. Their ships were sleek and silent, gliding just above the plains. Elior watched through his binoculars, calculating distances and assessing potential threats. He gathered the widows near the barn. "They are watching," he said quietly. "Do not show fear. Do not act recklessly. We will prepare, but we will not fight unless necessary. Humans survive best when careful, clever, and united. We must be all three." The widows nodded, moving into positions that suited their abilities. Some would handle observation, using their sharp senses to detect movement in the distance. Others focused on communication systems, learning how to relay messages silently if needed. A few practiced simple defensive maneuvers, guided by Elior's careful instructions. Days turned into weeks. Life on the ranch became a balance between daily chores and preparation. The widows grew more confident, moving with grace and purpose. Elior observed subtle changes in their behavior, the way they adapted to the animals, how they improved the crops, and how they supported one another. Each day, the ranch became not just a place of survival, but a home. Yet challenges persisted. A harsh storm swept across the plains one afternoon. The twin suns vanished behind dark clouds, and wind whipped through the grasses like a living force. Elior moved quickly, guiding the widows to secure the animals and reinforce the structures. They worked seamlessly together, their trust in him evident in every movement. When the storm passed, the plains were scattered with debris, but no one was harmed. Elior looked at the widows, their expressions tired but determined. He felt a surge of pride. Humans survived through effort, yes, but also through collaboration. He realized that the widows had already become an essential part of that survival. In quieter moments, Elior observed the small joys that life now offered. The widows discovered that one of the goats, with a playful nature, loved to chase after rolling tools. They laughed together, their voices light and musical, filling the air that had been silent for so long. Elior chuckled quietly, feeling a warmth he had not known in decades. But peace was fragile. One morning, Elior noticed an unusual glow on the horizon. A large ship, larger than any he had seen before, approached slowly. It moved with precision, as though testing the defenses of the plains. Elior felt the familiar tension coil in his chest. These were not casual travelers, they were inspecting, perhaps planning. He called the widows together. "They are coming closer," he said. "Stay calm, observe. Remember everything you have learned. We may need to act, but only together. Humans survive through cleverness, courage, and unity. We must show all three." The widows listened, their movements synchronized and deliberate. Elior felt a deep respect for them, not just as refugees, but as survivors, learners, and companions. Together they had adapted to this world, and together they would face whatever came next. That night, Elior walked among the plains, observing the ranch from the hills. The wind was soft, carrying the distant sounds of life. He thought about his own journey, Earth, the colonies, battles, and survival. And now he realized the human spirit was not just about enduring alone. It was about connecting, teaching, protecting, and learning from others. The widows were more than guests. They were allies, friends, and teachers. They had shown him that intelligence, courage, and resilience were not unique to humans. But the human capacity for empathy, for risk, for protective care, and for clever problem-solving, it remained unmatched. Elior understood that this was why humans were admired across planets, why they could inspire, adapt, and endure. As the suns rose the next day, Elior prepared for the approaching challenge. He inspected the ranch, checked supplies, and ensured the widows were ready. They moved. With quiet confidence, their trust in him evident in every action. He knew that any threat could test them, but humans had always faced adversity with intelligence and courage. Together, they would survive. The plains stretched endlessly before them, the twin suns casting long shadows. Life on the ranch had changed. The quiet existence Elior had known for decades was gone, replaced by something vibrant, dynamic, and unpredictable. Yet he did not fear it. Humans thrived in uncertainty, and Elior was ready to prove that even here on a distant world, the human spirit could endure, protect, and inspire. He looked at the widows, their forms outlined against the morning light. 11 lives intertwined with his own, shaping a new future that none of them could have predicted. The human alone had become a leader, a protector, and a part of something greater than himself. And as the distant ship approached, Elior felt the familiar stirrings of determination and courage. Humans had faced greater dangers, survived longer odds, and built stronger bonds. He smiled quietly, ready to meet the challenge. Together, they would face whatever came next. The ranch, the widows, and Elior himself were no longer just survivors. They were a family united by trust, courage, and the unshakable human spirit. The plains were quiet in the early morning, but Elior felt the tension in the air. He had trained the widows for weeks. teaching them not only how to care for the ranch but also how to respond to danger. The twin suns rose slowly, casting long shadows across the grasses, and every movement seemed sharper, louder, more significant. Elior moved through the barn, checking tools and supplies. The widows were already awake, their calm confidence evident. Some were preparing the animals, reinforcing fences with quick, clever adjustments. Others were checking communication arrays and simple defense mechanisms that Elior had built. Each widow had adapted, learning quickly how to act in harmony with the land, the animals, and the humans' way of thinking. "Remember," Elior said firmly, "danger is not always direct. Observation, strategy, and calm decisions keep us alive. We fight only if we must." The widows nodded, moving to their stations. Elior's experience as a human soldier taught him that careful preparation could prevent conflict. But even with preparation, the unknown was always a challenge. He scanned the horizon with binoculars and his heart tightened. The ships had returned, larger, more organized, their hulls glinting in the sunlight. These were scouts from a faction, known for taking what they wanted without thought or mercy. "They are coming closer," he said quietly. The widows stiffened but did not panic. Their trust in Elior was complete. Elior moved quickly, assigning tasks. "Two of you watch the skies and communicate changes. 2 handle the animals and secure the pens. The rest help me reinforce structures and prepare tools. Everyone else, stay ready." The widows obeyed, moving with precision and grace. They understood the stakes. Elior realized that humans were not alone in courage. These beings had survived tremendous loss, and their bravery was impressive. Yet human ingenuity would guide them through this test. As the sun climbed higher, the scouts landed beyond the ridge. Their movement was slow but deliberate. Elior instructed the widows to remain out of sight, observing the scouts' actions. He crouched behind a boulder, assessing the terrain and the scouts' positions. His mind worked quickly, calculating options. He knew that humans excelled in strategy, creativity, and adaptation, qualities that could turn even a small advantage into survival. The scouts began to approach the fence line. Their sensors swept over the plains, searching for signs of life. Elior signaled the widows to remain hidden, knowing that revealing themselves too early could provoke unnecessary conflict. Minutes passed like hours. Elior's heart beat steadily, controlled, focused. Then one of the scouts adjusted their sensors, clearly detecting movement near the barn. Elior held his breath, preparing for action. Suddenly, one of the widows stepped forward accidentally, a branch snapping under her foot. The scout's sensors immediately locked on. Elior signaled her back with a swift hand motion, and she froze, her expression tense. The scouts began moving faster, their approach deliberate and precise. Elior knew this was the moment to act. "Now," he whispered. He moved quickly, using a small flare device to create a distraction, drawing the scouts' attention toward a different part of the plains. The widows followed his lead, using clever tricks and quick maneuvers to confuse the scouts. They lifted small barriers, created false signals, and guided animals to create unexpected noise. The plains became a maze of sound, movement, and subtle traps. The scouts hesitated, unsure of what they were encountering. Elior's heart raced, but his mind was sharp. He had trained for situations like this, using strategy rather than sheer force. Humans thrived in adversity because they could think, adapt, and improvise. Now those qualities were guiding the widows as well. The widow with green skin, the one who could sense vibrations, alerted Elior to a hidden scout trying to flank them. Elior nodded, signaling another widow to intercept. Together they moved. With speed and precision, their actions coordinated without words. The scout was delayed, buying time for the others. Meanwhile, Elior adjusted small automated defenses he had built, simple but effective. He activated lights that flashed intermittently, confusing the scout's sensors. He triggered small barriers that created false paths. It was a game of intelligence, patience, and skill. Hours passed, the suns climbing higher. The scouts, frustrated and cautious, began to withdraw. Elior knew that patience and strategy had won. He moved carefully toward the ridge, observing the scouts' departure. Relief washed over him, but he remained vigilant. This encounter had proven something vital. Humans, even when alone, could inspire courage and strategy that others could follow. After the scouts left, Elior gathered the widows near the barn. Their expressions were tired but proud. "You all did well," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. Humans survive not by strength alone, but by thinking, observing, and working together. Today, you showed that same spirit. The widows smiled softly, their faces reflecting a mix of exhaustion and accomplishment. They had survived another challenge, guided by human ingenuity and leadership. They had learned that courage was not just physical, it was in the mind, the strategy, and the willingness to act with care and precision. In the following days, the ranch returned to its routine. The animals moved freely, the crops thrived under careful attention, and the widows continued to learn. But there was a new sense of confidence in the air. They had faced danger and emerged stronger, united in purpose and skill. Elior observed the widows as they worked together, their coordination seamless and elegant. They had adapted to this world, learning not only the practical tasks of ranch life but also the strategies that ensured survival. Humans were known for their resilience, and now, Elior saw that this resilience could inspire others across the stars. Even in moments of rest, the widows showed determination. They explored the plains, observing wildlife, studying plants, and discussing ways to improve the ranch. Their curiosity and intelligence reminded Elior of the human drive to explore, learn, and innovate. Together, they built more than a home. They built a community, a family, and a system of trust and protection. Elior spent quiet evenings walking among the plains, reflecting on the lessons learned. Humans survived not because they were the strongest, but because they could think, adapt, and protect those who could not protect themselves. The widows had learned these lessons, and Elior had learned from them as well, about courage, adaptability, and the importance of unity in the face of adversity. 1. Evening, as the twin suns set, painting the plains in gold and violet, Elior gathered the widows. "We are stronger together," he said softly. "Humans endure, yes, but survival is about more than one life. It is about the lives we protect, the trust we build, and the courage we share. Today, we have proven that." The widows listened, their wide eyes reflecting gratitude and understanding. They had come seeking shelter, but they had found something more: a home, a family, and a guide who showed them the strength within themselves. Elior smiled quietly, feeling a sense of pride he had not known in years. The plains stretched endlessly before them. The animals moved freely, the crops thrived, and the wind carried the whispers of life. Danger had come, but unity and strategy had prevailed. Humans had survived countless challenges across planets, and now Elior realized that even on a distant world, with alien companions, the human spirit remained powerful, inspiring, and unyielding. As night fell, Elior looked at the stars. The widows were settling into the barn, their movements calm and purposeful. He knew that more challenges would come. Others would be curious, hostile, or unpredictable. But he also knew that humans, when combined with courage, intelligence, and empathy, could face anything. Tomorrow would bring new tasks, new lessons, and perhaps new visitors. But for tonight, the ranch was safe. The widows were safe. And Elior, the retired human who had once lived alone, felt a sense of purpose he had not felt for decades. The plains were alive with quiet energy, and the stars reflected the endless possibilities of survival, unity, and courage. Elior understood something profound. Humans could inspire, protect, and endure, not just alone, but through the bonds they built with others, even those from distant stars. And as he closed his eyes that night, Elior felt the warmth of family, the pride of leadership, and the unshakable belief that together they could face whatever the universe sent next. The ranch had never felt more alive. The twin suns shone gently over the plains, casting long, warm shadows that danced with the wind. Elior walked among the fields, checking the crops and animals, but today his heart carried a quiet satisfaction. The widows were no longer visitors. They were part of the land, part of the rhythm, part of a life that had grown richer with their presence. Over the past weeks, the widows had adapted fully to the ranch. They learned the language, the daily routines, and even the small habits of Elior's animals. The cows and goats now recognized their voices and gestures, moving calmly when they approached. The vegetable patches thrived, tended carefully by the widow's delicate hands. Their presence brought life not just to the ranch, but to Elior himself. It was a morning like any other, yet it carried a sense of promise. Elior watched as the widows worked together, moving in harmony with each other and the land. He felt a warmth that came from knowing that, despite all they had lost, they had found a place to belong. Elior, the tallest widow called softly, approaching him with a small basket of freshly harvested herbs. We thank you for everything." Elior shook his head gently. "No thanks needed. You are part of this now. This is your home, as much as mine." He smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride and contentment. Humans had survived many challenges, but the greatest strength was the ability to build bonds, to protect others, and to create life in the face of hardship. That was what he had done here, and what the widows had embraced. In the days that followed, Elior and the widows worked to improve the ranch. They combined human methods with alien knowledge, creating systems that were stronger and more efficient than before. Water storage was optimized, crops grew faster, under the careful balance of human and alien techniques, and even the fences were reinforced in clever ways. The ranch was no longer just a shelter, it was a thriving, harmonious home. One evening, as the suns began to set, Elior noticed a familiar glow on the horizon. At first he tensed, thinking of the scouts who had once tested them. But the glow was gentle, accompanied by small lights that moved gracefully through the sky. The widows joined him, their eyes wide with curiosity and caution. "They come in peace," Elior said quietly, recognizing the familiar ships of distant allies. "Humans are known across the stars, and so are those who respect life and courage." The visitors landed nearby, and Elior approached, flanked by the widows. They greeted the newcomers with calm dignity. It was a meeting of respect, not hostility. Elior realized that the reputation humans carried, resilience, cleverness, and empathy, had reached across galaxies. They did not need to prove themselves through violence. Their spirit was recognized by others. After the visitors left, Elior returned to the barn, where the widows were preparing dinner. The smells of roasted vegetables and spiced grains filled the air, blending with the earthy scent of the plains. The widows moved with ease and grace, their presence bringing warmth and life to the quiet spaces that had once felt empty. As they ate, Elior spoke quietly. "You have all shown courage, patience, and intelligence. You survived your planet's destruction, adapted to this world, and helped protect this ranch. You are more than survivors. You are family." The widows exchanged glances, their expressions reflecting gratitude, relief, and pride. They had come seeking shelter, but they had found connection, purpose, and belonging. Elior smiled, feeling the weight of years spent alone lift from his shoulders. The human capacity for empathy, creativity, and protection had brought them together. In the following weeks, life on the ranch settled into a steady, joyful rhythm. The widows took on roles suited to their strengths, contributing fully to the ranch's growth. They discovered new joys, exploring the plains, observing wildlife, learning to anticipate weather patterns, and even teaching Elior small lessons from their world. The ranch became a place of shared knowledge, laughter, and mutual respect. Elior watched them often, noting subtle changes. The widow with green skin, once shy and cautious, now moved confidently among the animals, her hands steady and sure. The pale blue-skinned widow had learned to use human tools, combining her knowledge of plants with techniques Elior had taught her. Each widow had grown stronger, braver, and more connected, not just to him but to the ranch itself. One evening, Elior sat on the ridge overlooking the plains. The winds whispered through the grasses, carrying the faint hum of life. The suns dipped low, casting long shadows, and the widows moved below, tending animals, gathering herbs, and laughing softly. Elior felt a sense of peace he had not known in decades. He thought about humans, their ability to endure, adapt, and protect. They had survived wars, disasters, and isolation, not because of strength alone, but because of intelligence, empathy, and courage. And now he realized humans could inspire others, teach them to survive, and create bonds that transcended species and worlds. The widows joined him on the ridge, settling around him with quiet grace. "This land, it feels like home," one whispered. Elior nodded. "It is home. Not because of the land, but because of all of us. We built this together." For the first time in decades, Elior felt complete. The loneliness that had defined his life was gone. He had taught, protected, and guided, and in return, he had been taught, inspired, and joined in purpose. Humans had the ability to endure, yes, but also to create connection, hope, and life wherever they went. Days turned into weeks, and the ranch continued to thrive. Animals were healthy, crops abundant, and the plains felt alive with motion and purpose. The widows laughed more, explored more, and shared stories of their pasts, slowly weaving their histories into the fabric of this new life. Elior listened, sharing his own stories of Earth, of human colonies, and of adventures that had shaped him. One morning, Elior noticed a small figure on the horizon, a child, human in appearance, waving from a distant path. The widows gathered around, curious and cautious. Elior smiled, his heart warming. Humans were rare here, but they were not gone. The child approached, eyes wide with wonder at the sight of the thriving ranch and the unusual companions within it. "This is your home," Elior said, kneeling to greet the child. "And these are my family." He gestured to the widows, who smiled warmly. The child's face lit up with recognition, awe, and excitement. It was a reminder that life continued, that the human spirit could endure, and that even in the vastness of space, connection and family were possible. Elior realized that humans did more than survive. They inspired, nurtured, and created hope across the universe. The twin suns climbed higher, casting long golden rays over the plains. The ranch buzzed with life, laughter, and purpose. The widows worked alongside Elior, their skills, courage, and intelligence enhancing every corner of the ranch. Together, they were stronger, braver, and united in purpose. Elior looked at them, a quiet pride filling his heart. "We have survived challenges," he said softly. "We have faced danger, adapted to this world, and learned from each other. And now, we are not just survivors. We are a family." The widows nodded, their eyes shining. "Family," they echoed, a simple word carrying profound meaning. That evening, as the sun set, Elior walked through the fields with the widows. They laughed softly, shared stories, and admired the beauty of the plains. The air was warm, filled with the scent of plants and soil. The animals moved freely, comfortable and calm. The ranch was alive, vibrant, and full of hope. Elior reflected on his life, the solitude, the challenges, and the unexpected arrival of the 11 widows. What had begun as a quiet existence had transformed into a life filled with purpose, connection, and joy. Humans had the ability to endure, yes, but they also had the power to inspire, protect, and create bonds that transcended worlds. The stars began to shine above, distant and bright, reflecting the endless possibilities of life and survival. Elior smiled, feeling the quiet strength of humans, the courage to endure, the intelligence to adapt, and the heart to protect and nurture. The widows were no longer just guests. They were family. And together, they would face whatever the universe offered, united by trust, courage, and the unshakable human spirit. The plains stretched endlessly before them, filled with life, laughter, and hope. Elior, once a retired human living alone, now led a family that spanned species, combining courage, intelligence, and compassion. They had survived loss, danger, and uncertainty, and in doing so had built a new home, a new life, and a new future. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with gold and violet. The wind whispered through the grasses, carrying with it the quiet promise of tomorrow. And for the first time in decades, Elior felt a deep, unshakable peace. Humans had endured, humans had thrived, and humans had shown that the spirit of life, compassion, courage, and ingenuity, could unite worlds and create a family where none had existed before. The ranch was no longer just a place, it was a symbol of hope, unity, and the enduring power of the human spirit. Elior looked at the widows, his companions, his family, and felt a quiet certainty. They were ready for whatever the universe had in store, together. And in that moment, the retired human, once alone, smiled. Life, he realized, was never meant to be solitary. It was meant to be shared, nurtured, and lived boldly, and together they would thrive.